Hi, how are you?
Hey, how you doing there, man?
Good.
Sorry, messing up here.
Thanks for making some time for me.
No worries.
Sorry about the mess up on Monday. My computer actually died.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
you can't see this, but you can't see it, but this is a brand new computer. So,
Oh, good for you. Good for you.
yeah.
Yeah, that was a nice New Year's gift.
Yes. Accidental, but nice.
Mhm.
Um, so we'll just talk for about 10 minutes and we'll edit this down to about the best 3 or 4 minutes. So this isn't live right now.
Okay.
Uh, then we'll get this ready for pub date.
All right.
Um, so, you know, having seen our review of this book, and then I received the galley. Um, I guess one of the things I didn't understand is how impressively thorough it is. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's an aspect of his presidency that you haven't sort of ruminated about, and I, you know, and that's impressive. And I wondered, how long have you actually been working on this book?
Yeah, it's been a 7-year journey.
Yeah.
I was slated to give the Du Bois lectures at Harvard the day after Obama won. I
Mm.
was in Grant Park as part of the TV coverage for Television One, TV One. And the next day, I was to fly to Cambridge to deliver 3 lectures on Jay-Z. And I was prepared to do that. But after Obama won, I said, I don't think I can do this. So, kind of improvised off the top of my head for the next 3 days. I
Yeah.
lectured on Barack Obama. Thus began my journey into a literary engagement with this singular figure. So, since that time, I've been ruminating on, reflecting on, thinking about Barack Obama, and it's all come together now.
Yeah. And so that kind of more extemporaneous thinking and writing is that, does that come easily for you? Or because I mean the prose here is very it's clear that you've thought about it, and there's nice turns of phrase here. So to me that says you're someone who sits down and actually thinks about your prose, but you can also do this extemporaneous kind also.
Yeah, well, being an ordained Baptist minister for the last 35 years has its virtues. Seat of the pants rhetoric, fly by night, some would say, but the improvisational character of the rhetorical practices of the Black church certainly have been part and parcel, woof and warp of who I am as an intellectual, as a public orator, as a thinker, and as a person who's intervened on television and internet and so on. So that aspect of it certainly availed itself to me, so to speak. And then on the other hand, I tried to go over every sentence time and again, writing it and rewriting it to make sure that my intent was clear, that my purpose was lucid, and that my prose would carry the moral weight of the investigation that I was undertaking.
Right, right. And so are you a practicing minister still now?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, yeah. In fact, as part of the tour, I'll go to several Black megachurches to talk about this book and to preach and to sign the books.
Oh, great.
Mhm.
Um, so do you think of this book as sort of an about face from your earlier thoughts about Obama and his relationship with Black Americans, or is it more of sort of an evolution in your thinking? Because some of the PR around this book is talking about how it's a real change in your thoughts, but I wondered how you thought about that.
Well, it's certainly an evolution because that evolution has tracked Obama's evolution itself.
Mhm.
My thinking about the president who I've known since '91 has measured every step of his progression, and I've engaged him, twice as a surrogate. But this is a far different book than that. This is a critical analysis of Obama, and I see it as the kind of full portrait of my own engagement with him in public. Some have thought, well, this is a new twist, a turn that Dyson is now critically engaging Obama. Well, it depends upon the purposes for which I speak on Obama in public. If I'm his surrogate, as I was twice, obviously I'm articulating in defense of Obama's principles and practices, my ideas about what his presidency is. But as a cultural critic, which is what I've spent the lion's share of my time doing, that's a different hat to wear, and it's a different burden to bear, so to speak, and it's a different telos, it's a different goal. And in that case, I've tried to balance an appreciation for the extraordinary obstacles and impediments that have blocked him from flourishing as he might otherwise do, and at the same time looking at some of his own self-imposed barriers and some of his failures and flaws. So it's a balanced critique of Obama, and something that I've done from the very beginning, but it's been obscured by those who claim because I wasn't as virulent or as nasty or engaging in ad hominem assaults upon him, that somehow there wasn't sharp critique and there wasn't protracted and sustained engagement with him at a critical level. So I see this book as the culmination of that project, and it allows me to stretch out and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and to talk about those things which have been edifying and powerful, and those things which have been problematic.
Yeah. Is it difficult or maybe tricky for you to be someone who has known him since 1991, and I can tell in your book that there's many things you admire about him, but now you're writing a book that, you know, is very fair to him, I would say, but, you know, also takes him to task for certain things. Is that a difficult road to maneuver?
It is, because, you know, obviously I want to see him do well. I admire him in many ways. I think he's a remarkable figure, will go down, in my estimation, as one of the greatest presidents we've ever had. And yet when it comes to race, he has faltered, he's fumbled, he's stumbled. He has been hesitant, recalcitrant, well, reluctant, I would say, and reticent about issues of race. And I've tried to probe the reasons for that, to engage him as a public thinker and a person who should be putting forth public policy, but instead of that, was putting forth public morality. Instead of serious, engaged, sustained public critique of the forces that hurt Black people as American citizens, or providing public policy to help them, he was kind of taking to his bully pulpit to beat upon Black people, to scold them, to remonstrate against them morally. And I found that quite troubling. And yes, I had to gird up my loins, so to speak, and tell the truth about that, no matter, you know, the consequences, knowing full well that like Beyonce, whom I love and adore, has her agency in the Beehive, the Obama bots, as some have called them, but the Obama, you know, supporters who are rather more uncritical, might find that problematic. But my job is to tell the truth as best as I can, and to wrestle with these ideas in a way that acknowledges the barriers and options that he had and the choices he made in light of them and what their consequences were.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a very fair book. But, you know, this sort of frankness you're speaking about, you know, when we're writing, that's one thing. When you're I mean, you got to interview the president for this book. When you're interviewing the president of the United States, were you able to have that kind of frankness with him in person, did you feel like? Or?
Well, I certainly have had it, not during the particular interview I conducted in the Oval Office for this book, but in some of the times when I've gone to the White House. And in one particular case where I think Jonathan Alter notes it in his second book on Obama, I think it's The Promise, where, you know, I expressed quite frankly and quite directly my belief that there should be targeted public policy for African-American people and others, in the same way that gay, Latino, you know, gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual people had their issues targeted, or Latino brothers and sisters, or those in the environment, whatever your issue was and your subgroup was, those things were targeted, even though his claim was to a universal approach. And I said to him directly that in the White House, that when you go to the emergency ward, you don't get medicine. If you have cancer, you get chemotherapy. If you have diabetes, you get insulin. And if you have a hangnail, you get aspirin. So the medicine is targeted toward the particular ill that's there. And he said, I disagree with that. I think that a universal prescription that, you know, helps everybody, and then in particular helps African-American people, is the best route to, if you will, racial redemption and the social uplift of Black people. And I understand that. He's in a situation where to say Black anything would arouse the suspicion and skepticism of so many millions in America, so many citizens who were voters, and those who were looking at his administration to determine or discern whether or not he was going to give an extra wink and nod to Black people. But I think the self-consciousness that President Obama bore in relationship to that issue made him rather hesitant to address what should have been a normal course of procedure for a president. And a particular population is hurting. It's my responsibility as president to address them. Politics, after all, is about the delivery of critical resources to a vulnerable population in a time of need and crisis. At least part of what politics is about is that. And I think he reneged on that initially, but he's evolved. Situations and circumstances have evolved. The Black Lives Matter movement in the street, hopefully progressive and persistent criticism of those like myself, as well as the change of events. Ferguson, what happened in Staten Island, what happened in Baltimore with Freddie Gray. I mean, this is blood in the streets, and that blood in the streets called out to the president and encouraged him, moved him forward, along with the death of Trayvon Martin and the death of the Emanuel Nine. These racial crises formed a trajectory of racial pain and crisis that forced this president into his bully pulpit, not to lambast and lacerate Black people, but in a principled fashion to defend them and to also speak about race in a way that he had been much more reluctant to do earlier in his presidency.
Great. That's exactly what I wanted to talk about.
All right, my man. Sounds good. Sounds good. We can go on for another hour.
Alrighty. Well, thanks for your time again, and good luck with the book. I really enjoyed it.
Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate that very kindly.
Okay, have a good day.
You too.